There's only a portion of the year above us that took time off, and our year, and we're the only people who remember what it was like before COVID. Other than that, everyone else is having their image of Stanford shaped by what Stanford wants it to be coming out of this COVID break. So my name's Axel Rivera-De, and I am the kitchen manager in EBF, the Enchanted Broccoli Forest.
I'm Susie Garcia. I'm currently an RA in EBF and was an RA in EVGR last year.
My name's Elias Aceves. I'm a junior, and I'm currently the community manager down at Terra, which is like a co-op, but it's like the unofficial queer co-op, but everyone knows it's the queer co-op.
I'm Julia. I'm staffing Robley, which was a 4-class dorm my first year and is now an upper class dorm.
I'm Timothy. I'm the training director for KZSU.
Hi, I'm Omar El-Sabrut. I'm the general manager, one of the 2 general managers of the radio station. And also, I think it will come up that I'm one of the kitchen managers and like residential staff at Column Bay this year.
As staff this year, a lot has changed, and especially during staff training, it kind of felt like the rug had been fully pulled out under our feet, as like a lot of new policies were rolled in with absolutely no notice and no context given to them, and none of the feedback that staff gave was taken into account.
During RA training week, like we essentially we came into this house and a lot of the things were missing. A lot of the things were like broken, especially in the kitchen. And like they moved a lot of things and we couldn't find a lot of the stuff that we initially thought we were gonna have.
The first day that residents moved in, we had to ask them to help us set up the house. We worked from, I'm not exaggerating, 9 a.m. to midnight. Everything was covered in grease or was turned off. We had no means of washing our dishes, which is also like a sanitation issue. So there were, even from just like a logistical standpoint, everything was a disaster in those first 2 weeks. We had 2 staff members get injured, no form of workers' compensation or anything like that. It was literal manual labor.
We don't have anyone to talk to. We're expected to go directly to the community coordinator, who is 1 step above the RD. But 6 different members of my staff have reached out to him in the last 3 weeks, and none of us have gotten an email back. Ultimately, we're really lucky to live in a house with RFs who are responsive and fantastic and have served as some sort of connection between us and the broader university. But it still feels like we are totally isolated.
I think what I began to realize like near the beginning of like staff training was that like Res Ed actually has no power, and it's actually just like the board of trustees sending people to talk to us, and then when we complain to Res Ed, they're like, well, we have nothing to do. I'm like, then what's your job? Like literally, like you're just serving this, in my opinion, you're serving an administrative role that serves no real purpose except to be a mediator between the people who actually have power and the people who are complaining.
Everyone will say whatever your complaint is not their problem. There's always someone higher up in the hierarchy who's making the decisions. Their hands are always tied by somebody else, and it is impossible to figure out who is responsible for anything. And they so clearly do that as a way to push off blame. Like, you can't complain about things if you don't have any way of knowing who to talk to or like who's in charge. And they very much decentralize that power, so it's never anybody's fault.
For us, this was all the way up to the Vice Provost for Student Affairs. We were able to speak with Susie Brubaker-Cole, and we got the sense that like even this person who is supposed to be in charge of these matters was like claiming that this like policy is not under their directive. And so like maybe they care, but like nobody can do anything about it. Or they're just trying to divert us from like actually trying to make things happen. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of like abdicating of responsibility. I don't think we found a single person who like would be like, oh, like here's like I can do this, and I can, who like was willing to take on, I think, the problem.
My biggest problem was with the alcohol policy that was kind of pitting staff and residents against each other, turning us into, I don't know, some kind of like patrol. We're supposed to be like policing our residents, which is obviously not how you build a safe, welcoming environment for like a residence.
Stanford knows students are going to drink. They're aware of that. OAPE has always tried to do things to make drinking safer rather than to eliminate drinking altogether because they know that's not feasible. But they essentially just transferred all liability onto RAs by now making it our fault when we don't report potential drinking, so that any harms that happen fall on us rather than the university. And they also just made it more likely that students will drink dangerously by forcing it underground and making sure that students, especially freshmen, can't trust their RAs.
On like Friday and Saturday nights, when I know like the expectation at this point is that people are drinking, there's just no rooms open and you can hear loud voices inside. And I've had, I saw the other day, there was someone in my hall, and this made me actually cry. There's someone in my hall who was just like kind of standing outside a room where there was noise and like looking at it, like kind of, I don't know, longingly, not to prescribe emotion. But that made me really sad because like, I don't know what the precautions are about like inviting people into your pod or whatever it is, but it feels as if there's this immense barrier to connection between the people who are living in my dorm, and I don't know what I can do to bridge it.
I was really close to my freshman RAs, and my freshman dorm was really big on open door policy. So like people would check in with the RAs if they knew they were going to be drinking at night. RAs would like stop by with snacks and water when people were drinking and like hang out and like make it very clear that they like cared a lot more about our safety than they did about any sort of like punitive aspect, because what we were doing was illegal. And that was a really big deal to me because like I came from like a very conservative household, like had never drank or like smoked before I came to Stanford. And it was like, I felt safer and I felt a lot like more comfortable in my freshman dorm because I knew that like there were people there who were like watching and looking out for us. And it wasn't like we had to hide what we were doing.
There's only a portion of the year above us that took time off, and our year, and we're the only people who remember what it was like before COVID. Other than that, everyone else is having their image of Stanford shaped by what Stanford wants it to be coming out of this COVID break. I think the neighborhoods are a big thing. You can tell that that's different. They just stuck these random signs in front of all these houses and expected them to create communities out of that. I think it's laughable. But in so many other ways, the fact that Greek houses, there are more Greek houses than there used to be, that co-ops are in jeopardy now. We have to reapply to potentially even exist as houses on campus. Things like that were not things that we really had to deal with, or things that at least I was aware of before COVID.
Co-ops have always been this divergent part of campus of where these pockets of resistance exist. Like if you enter like a co-op, like Synergy or like Column Bay or anything, like you know that like not only are these like spaces like where you do like cooperative living, but like it's usually where you host meetings for like a lot of the activist groups on campus, or you like create the posters that will be displayed later, or like things like that. And these spaces have always existed on this campus to serve that direct purpose of resistance. I was like, I'm so invested in this project of trying to reinvent a space where we can have like an authentically queer culture that I don't think can be found on Stanford, which is strange because you associate the Bay Area with so much openness, and here I feel like it's quite sanitized.
Ultimately, someone is going to be making a decision on whether EBF, Synergy, Terra, all these co-ops, they're going to be deciding if we deserve to exist on this campus anymore. And like, why wouldn't we, right?
This year we had like quite a frustrating battle with the university administration about getting the station reopened and getting it to be reopened sort of in the same way that it was open before. KZSU has been around for probably about 60 years here, maybe slightly longer. And in that whole period, the radio station has been in large part operated by and kept together by community members who are not necessarily Stanford affiliates. And this year, the university thought that it would be reasonable to ban, or not ban, but to prevent community members from having access to the radio station as a part of a larger, mission to make the university more insular, I think.
Yeah. And when we're talking about community members or non-Stanford affiliates, we're talking about like anyone ranging from like Palo Alto high schoolers to Bay Area DJs who have been like running shows for like years and years, and they do stuff for the station, from like running our website and like operating all of the machinery, down to like cataloging our massive music library and all of that. So they're very essential, and without them having access, the station would not be able to exist in its current form.
What's your ideal of a university? What are the things that come to mind when you think of like university as an institution?
Just like a place that prioritizes learning.
Until probably pretty recently, honestly, I definitely had this image of like an intellectual, like utopia, like sort of scenario where it's like it wasn't about like a bottom line or like growing the endowment. It's very much about like a place where people come to like pursue knowledge and to like learn about the world and themselves. And like a lot of it is about like making connections with like your peers and with like professors and like people doing research. And I don't know, that to me is like what a university should be focused on, I guess, is like facilitating those sorts of connections and interactions.
I don't think it should be a place to retreat from the world. And I guess, I know this is kind of like keeping from going into the more abstract, but I think that when the university is, blocking community members or non-Stanford affiliates from entering the station, that's kind of exactly what's happening. But I think that like the university should be a place for people to, learn, but also be able to think about like how they situate themselves in like wider communities. And I think isolating is not a way to do that.
And it feels like there's too many academics and not enough intellectuals on this campus, because the academics are purely invested in what the academy wants, and the academy is purely invested in what the state wants. And then there's no room for an intellectual debate because they do not want to have that. They just want to get paid well, write their new book, and nothing gets advanced. And I feel like it's a very critical moment for students to realize that like the academy will not teach you what you need to be taught, and it's up to students to form their own groups and learn among themselves that like there are other alternatives to the schools of thought which are hegemonic in this whole space. And I feel like if students can do that, they can revive what the university can and should be.
You can't have a college or university that is purely you go to class and you come back from class and like expect students to be satisfied. So I would say that, I don't know, this is obviously just like plugging ourselves, and also the Daily, I guess, but like obviously extracurriculars are just like fundamental to the university experience. Yeah.
People talk about Stanford as, fostering the minds of the future. This is where the greatest adolescents, greatest college students in America are. And I think that's definitely true. But ultimately, the university feels like it's run as a business. It is a business, essentially. So many of the businessy aspects of it are really at the forefront of so many of their decisions. Because if they were to actually care about fostering intellectualism and fostering these minds that are supposed to go out, change the world, make the world a better place, why don't you have mental health resources for them? Why do they all have like eating disorders, depression, anxiety? Like, we're all dealing with all these things. You can't get an appointment at CAPS. The bridge is no longer a 24/7 service. Like, you turn to help and there's no help for you there. It's hard. It's hard to be here, and it's hard to feel like a top mind in America or whatever when the institution that I'm at wants the things that would make me happy, would make me successful, wants them gone, or wants them to look completely different, wants to reshape them into their own image that they can monetize in a sense.